It does look, I'm going to say it does look as if everybody who was going to join has joined. So could I now hand over to Penny to open up this event?
Hello, somebody wave to say that I can be heard, please. Thank you very much. I'm actually going to just open today with the Freedom Commemoration, which I know we very often close with. But it felt like something more reflective at the end to close our collective silence was right. So I'm going to do a slightly slower version of the Freedom Commemoration and imagine it opening as our arms are connecting out into the world and to other nations. And if you're in Protest in Harmony, I will be singing it lower than we usually sing it. Please do join in. Don't be alarmed if you can't do the low harmonies. That's my fault. Rock the wind in the clear day's dawn, blows the winds, he'll stir gouty are the bay. But there's men o'er a rock wind blowing through the great glen of the world the day. It's a thought that will gather rottens, are they rogues that gang gallus fresh and gay? Tak the road and seek their lonings, for their ill ploys to sport and play. Nay, me will the bonny callants match to war when a braggart's cruisely craw. No, we winds free pitied and clachan, mon the ship sailing down the Brumney low. Broken families in lands we've had yet, will curse Scotland the bravely many men. Black and white into the Marriott, mac the vile barracks for the master's bed. Stay come all ye at him with freedom, never heed with their hoodies croak for doom. In your house, oh the bands o' Adam can find breed, Ballybrie and painted room. When MacLean meets with friends in Springburn, other roses and geens will turn to bloom. And a black lad beyond Niagara dings the fell gallows of the burgers doon.
Thank you, Penny, and welcome everybody to this year's commemoration of the Hiroshima bombing. It is, as most people now know, it's the 75th anniversary, so very poignant. This is an unusual gathering because we are doing it online rather than at the Mound like we normally do it. But otherwise, it's going to be a very similar format. And I'm pleased to have help with the looking after the ceremony by my colleague Ken, also from Edinburgh CND. So he'll be taking over most of the introducing of people. We will have a number of speakers, then we will have a minute's silence, and then there is another song to finish the event. So it may be a little shorter than it has been in the past. I don't know if there's anybody here who came along wasn't sort of invited as a speaker, who came along and expecting to speak. If you are in that situation, could you message me through the chat box and I'll see what I can do, okay? All right, so I'll hand over to you, Ken, as host, to introduce the speakers, if that's all right with you. Yeah. So.
It certainly helps to unmute myself here. Sorry about that, folks. The first of the invited speakers is Tommy Shepherd, MP, who's a SNP member, and he's been Member of Parliament for Edinburgh East since May 2015, and SNP spokesperson in the Cabinet Office in the House of Commons. So the floor is yours, Mr. Shepherd.
Trying to, there we go.
You have now.
Thank you very much, Ken, and thank you everyone for inviting me. This is weird, obviously, but it's been weird for quite a few months now, and we're all slowly getting used to looking at this patchwork of people on the screen rather than looking at a crowd of individuals in front of us. But it's still important to do this, I think, and I still consider it a very great honor to have been invited to speak, and I'm delighted to do so. Very briefly, simply to convey the support of the SNP for the campaign that you are undertaking and that is being undertaken throughout the country, and to pledge our support and renew our support for the peace movement today in Scotland and indeed throughout the United Kingdom and Europe. It is 75 years since the horrific events of the 6th of August 1945, when a bomb was dropped on the innocent people of Hiroshima, instantly killing 70,000 people and probably killing through radiation sickness and fallout the same number within a few weeks after that. In fact, conservative estimates now put the total death toll from Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs at about 340,000 people from those two events. To put that in some sort of perspective and to make it contemporary, that is more than half of the total number of deaths across the entire world in the space of the last 8 months from COVID-19, a pandemic which has affected us dramatically, as everyone knows. I think it's important in this 75th anniversary that we do rededicate ourselves to the cause of peace and to disarmament. And I know that we are in difficult times politically in terms of the United Kingdom. We have a majority Conservative government elected since we last had this commemoration, with a working majority, and determined, I think, to pursue its agenda, which includes not just opposition to disarmament, but a campaign for rearmament and a commitment to accelerate the Trident replacement program. That is something that I and my party have consistently opposed in Parliament, and we will continue to do so. But even if we were able to persuade the other opposition parties in the British Parliament of that endeavour, we still would be well short of a majority. The Conservatives are likely to get their way, at least until the next UK general election in 2024. Which is why I am increasingly excited at the prospect of what will happen in Scotland in May of next year, where we have a Scottish general election to elect a parliament at Holyrood, and where I think we will have the opportunity to assert again and to take a step further towards Scotland having the political capacity to act as an independent country on the world stage and to press the case for disarmament as a small, unaligned country. That is something which very much inspires and excites me, that possibility. I don't know if all colleagues on the screen will share it. I expect not. There are a diversity of views. But I think one of the great benefits of that campaign would be to give us the ability to press the cause for peace in a way that it seems that the United Kingdom is not going to do. And I think also all of our eyes will be in the other side of the Atlantic before even that happens, and we will be looking to what happens in November of this year in the United States, where it is my sincere hope that the Trump presidency will come to a calamitous end, as it truly deserves to do. And when that happens, I think we have the possibility, and I state it no stronger than that, but the possibility to begin to refocus the case for global disarmament and to stop the United States acting in the way that it has done, as trying to destroy all efforts towards working through the United Nations to press for a global nuclear arms ban. So there are, these are adverse circumstances in which we exist 75 years on from Hiroshima, but there are things that are on our agenda which can change that, and there is every reason for hope and to look forward to new circumstances and things changing, which will allow us a better chance of achieving success in our stated aims. But as everyone on this screen knows, this is a long game, and we have to be in it for the long term and to not regard one particular event in one year as being the be all and end all. So I'm confident that this campaign will go from strength to strength, and I'm confident that in the couple of years ahead, we will have the opportunity to move forward towards our goals in a way that has eluded us in recent years. So there's every reason to be hopeful, and if we get the chance next August to come and physically meet at the Mound, perhaps we may be celebrating not just the anniversary of Hiroshima, but also celebrating a change in circumstances, which will allow us a better context in which to make sure that something like Hiroshima never ever happens again, and that the technology which creates it and which allows it to happen is dismantled and put beyond use. So it is my great pleasure to join and support the commemoration, and look forward to working with you in the months and years ahead.
So it's my duty to now introduce the next speaker, who is the current rector of the University of Aberdeen, elected in 2014 and again in 2018. She's served as the co-convener of the Scottish Greens, and she's also been a councillor for the Leith Walk ward of the City of Edinburgh Council. So she's a all-round thoroughly good person. So please pray silence for Maggie Chapman.
Thank you very much, Ken. Thank you for that very kind introduction. I too would like to thank you and Eileen and everybody involved in organising this evening. I echo Tommy's words. I think it's really important that even in these weird times, we gather together to remember together what happened 75 years ago today. I want to start, if I may, with a poem written by Togi Sankichi, who was a Japanese poet and activist and survivor of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. He died in 1953, aged just 36. And this poem is called August the 6th. Can we forget that flash? Suddenly, 30,000 in the streets disappeared in the crushed depths of darkness. The shrieks of 50,000 died out. When the swirling yellow smoke thinned, buildings split, bridges collapsed, packed trains rested, singed, and a shoreless accumulation of rubble and embers, Hiroshima. Before long, a line of naked bodies walking in groups, crying, with skin hanging down like rags, hands on chests, stamping on crumbled brain matter, burnt clothing covering hips. Corpses lie on the parade ground like stone images of Jitsu, dispersed in all directions. On the banks of the river, lying one on top of another, a group that had crawled to a tethered raft. Also gradually transformed into corpses beneath the sun's scorching rays, and in the light of the flames that pierced the evening sky, the place where mother and younger brother were pinned under, alive, also engulfed in flames. And when the morning sun shone on a group of high school girls who had fled and were lying on the floor of the armory in excrement, their bellies swollen, one eye crushed, half their bodies raw flesh with skin ripped off, hairless, impossible to tell who was who. All had stopped moving in a stagnant, offensive smell, the only sound the wings of flies buzzing around metal basins. City of 300,000, can we forget that silence? In that stillness, the powerful appeal of the white eye sockets of the wives and children who did not return home, that tore apart our hearts. Can it be forgotten? We are here this evening because we have not forgotten. We want to remember. We want to hold the lives, all those lives that were ripped apart 75 years ago, in our minds and in our hearts. But our remembering is more than this, because it is not, it cannot be simply passive. As part of our remembering, we campaign for, we seek to create a world where such an atrocity can never happen again. And so, as we remember Hiroshima, we see very clearly the futility of war, the futility of nuclear weapons, our indiscriminate killing machines, more clearly than ever. We are told that those nuclear weapons are vital to our safety and security, but we know that this is nonsense, not only in terms of our security, but also morally and ethically. We do need security, but today, maybe more than ever before, it is obvious that the security we need is not offered by nuclear weapons. Instead of wasting billions on Trident, we should be focusing on the real threats, the threats that we've seen through the world over the last few months, novel pandemic diseases and cybersecurity. We know that nuclear weapons actually make us a target, and we know that they are immoral. But perhaps more importantly, they allow our leaders to think that they have protected us when they have not. This false sense of security helps to explain the hopeless response by the UK government and the US government to COVID-19. We deserve so much better, and we need so much better. We deserve an approach to human security that makes all humans more secure, not an approach based on the threat of mutually assured destruction. Now is the time to say no to nuclear weapons, and again we say no. We can see the real damage done by our failure to focus on the real threats to human security. Not only do we waste enormous sums of money on nuclear weapons and on war, but we are lulled into a false sense of security. The last 5-6 months shows us what a real security threat looks like and how unprepared we are. We need to focus our time, energy, and resources on securing all people's well-being. That should be our living memorial to Hiroshima, creating a safer world for all, free from the threat of war, and of a society determined to live in peace. Thank you.
And thanks very much indeed, Maggie. Thank you so much. And if I've got the running order right, I believe our next speaker is Jan Benvey. Is that correct, Eileen?
No. Yeah.
Sorry?
I can unmute myself. That's all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. Our next speaker is actually one of our own members, Rika. Rika is going to be effectively giving a message from Gordon Munro, who is the Labour councillor for Leith and also actually effectively a member of our group. He's been a supporter of Edinburgh CND for a very long time. And he does normally speak at this event, but on this occasion he can't. But he did say what he would like to say if he was there. And Rika has very kindly offered to actually say it for him. So thank you, Rika.
Okay. Unfortunately, Mr. Gordon Monroe is not going to be, cannot join us today, but he has sent us a link to an article on Morningstar about a court case involving the victims of radioactive black rain. I don't know if you have heard about the black rain, but it is widely acknowledged that the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima killed approximately 140,000 almost instantly, including acute radiation syndrome. But the survivors who are called hibakusha, which means irradiated people, they develop various health issues such as cancer and leukemia, and this happened decades later, and problems were also passed on to their descendants for 3 generations right now. Some of them are still suffering from diseases. And the Japanese government has been providing financial and medical benefits to hibakusha, but there were also many people who were left out of the scheme because they were not exposed to the direct blast at the ground zero in Hiroshima. So a few hours after the explosion, all this debris and all this contaminated radioactive material fell on Hiroshima as black rain, also surrounding regions, and irradiated additional population as well as water and food supplies in the area. And Hiroshima city originally rejected to include the victims who were exposed to black rain outside Hiroshima, and called these areas light rain areas, not eligible for compensation. However, 84 claimants who are suffering from illness such as cancer and cataract filed the lawsuits against the government. And last week on July 29th, the Japanese court finally admitted to recognize these people as atomic bomb victims after 5 years of court battle. The Japanese government recognized around 650,000 people as eligible as hibakusha status, so they get compensation. And nearly half of them are Hiroshima residents. And this is actually not the first time the legal battle between the governments and the people who believe they were unfairly denied of hibakusha status have fought. A group called Citizen Nuclear Information Center was established in 2003, and they are also seeking for the status through courts, and some of hearings are still ongoing. So, so in the newspapers, they said that it is a victory for these people who have been concentrated, but sadly, this is actually another example of how the impact of irradiation is undermined and downplayed by the authorities. In addition to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, numerous people have been impacted by nuclear bomb testings, and also production of nuclear bombs, and facilities such as Hanford in the United States, Mayak in Russia, and here also in the UK, the Sellafield are still facing significant challenges to maintain the safety of for coming hundreds of years. So, yeah, well, I think Tommy has mentioned this, but in spite of all these existing problems, some nuclear nations are still playing the power game, and in spite of the fact that 123 nations have voted for a treaty of prohibition of nuclear weapons. Yeah, yes, it's good news that the Ireland just joined this morning. Some of the nations, yeah, particularly United States, are boosting the nuclear arsenal and taking about talking about resuming nuclear bomb testings. And well, it is a bit ironic that Japan, the only country who experienced the atomic bomb, is also refusing to participate in this treaty on behalf of the United States. But I'd like to mention that majority of Japanese people, the citizens, are against nuclear weapons, and I think, you know, with the change of the governmental regime, there could be some change. But so on this Hiroshima Commemoration Day, I'm hoping that more people will realize that what is at stake and think about how we can move forward. Okay, if you're interested in reading the article, I can put the addresses, but that was a story of Black Rain and the irradiated people.
Thanks very much, Rika. And if I'm right this time, the next speaker is Jan. Is that correct, Eileen? Hello, hello. Most of us, certainly including people like me, just do our peace activism safely from home. But Jan has actually been to the Middle East. She featured in the BBC news channel as long ago as Saturday, the 25th of March, 2006, and the piece was discussing her plans to go, actually to go to Iraq in July of that year, she's also been on the management committee of the Peace and Justice Center, and she knows about conflict resolution in schools. So she again, like most of our speakers, she's a thoroughly all-round good person. So I'll shut up now and over to Jan.
Oh gosh, and for this meeting, I'm sort of speaking for the Edinburgh Stop the War Coalition, which I'm also involved with. As has been touched on, the real mortality of the atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan will never be known, because the initial destruction and the overwhelming chaos made orderly counting impossible. But we do know that tens of thousands of lives were just snuffed out. The heat from the bomb was so intense that some people just simply vanished. Human beings were vaporized. Human beings were melted. And over the following weeks and months and years, as Rika has referred to, many people continued to die, often horrific deaths from radiation poisoning. And years later, even some who thought they had survived unscathed suffered and died from cancers and other illnesses associated with the radiation. But as has been touched on tonight, despite these horrors, we've continued to develop bigger, actually much bigger nuclear weapons. We continue to invest vast sums of money in death. And let's not be fooled by the deterrent argument. NATO has repeatedly rejected calls to adopt what they call a no first use policy, arguing that a preemptive nuclear strike is a key option. And the UK has independently stated that they would use nuclear weapons in a preemptive initial strike. Back in 2017, the then Defence Secretary, Michael Fallon, stated in Parliament that the UK has neither a first use or no first use nuclear weapons policy, so that adversaries would not know when the UK would launch nuclear strikes. Politicians speak of the use of nuclear weapons almost as if it were a game of dare. And the latest developments are new kinds of nuclear weapons. They call them low-yield nuclear weapons. They're around 10 kilotons. And so if you think Hiroshima was 15, Nagasaki was 20. But they call them low-yield because it's meant to make them sound okay, particularly to use them for first strike. But of course it's not. And if we learned anything from Chernobyl and from Fukushima, it's that radiation spreads. They're just crazy. There is hope, as again Rika touched on. There's the UN Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which will hopefully pass into international law soon. As Tommy has mentioned, it's unlikely that our current government will do anything, but we should still be pressuring them to sign the treaty for the prohibition of the nuclear weapons, because we all want this country to be part of a future built on a just international relationships and the common good for all humanity. So as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the horrific bombing and remember the appalling suffering caused by these terrible weapons of mass destruction, we must pledge not only to rid the world of nuclear weapons, but to raise the call of war no more. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Jan. I believe our next speaker is Brian from the Peace and Justice Center, if I've got that right. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, let me see, where can I unmute myself?
You have done.
Okay, super. Great, yes, thanks. Hi, everyone. This morning on Radio 4, there was an interview with one of the hibakusha, the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, and the grandson of Harry Truman, the US president who, of course, ordered the bombings. Truman's grandson was asked if he was ever asked to apologize. He said the hibakusha never asked that they asked instead that we listen to their stories, that we remember, and that we do everything we can to ensure nuclear weapons never be used again. Earlier today, the P&J hosted an origami cranes workshop, and I told the story of Sadako, the story that has inspired people to make millions of these origami cranes, of these paper cranes, as a symbol of our hopes for peace and disarmament. Because Sadako was one of the hibakusha, I thought at least until she died, she was one of the hibakusha, and I thought it was worth hearing her story again. Sadako was born in the beautiful city of Hiroshima, and she was just 2 years old when my country created the atomic bomb, a bomb that was not just more powerful, but which destroys the environment for decades and continues to cause birth defects and illness and to kill people who were not yet born all these decades later. After months of aerial bombardment on Japanese cities, in which tens of thousands of civilians were intentionally targeted and killed, an American aircrew dropped that bomb from an airplane early on the morning of the 6th of August, 1945, as you all know, 75 years ago today. Others have already described the horrors that ensued, so I will pass over that and not repeat that. Sadako was just a toddler, 2 years old, and somehow she survived the bombing. She was thrown from the window of her house and her mother found her. But sadly, 10 years later, Sadako, like many other children from Hiroshima, developed leukemia. And when she was in hospital, she heard the legend of the cranes. Japanese cranes are beautiful, tall, white and black birds with red crowns, like the heron. I live near the pond here and saw a heron out there today, and thought of the cranes. The legend says that anyone who folds 1,000 origami cranes will be granted a wish by the gods. And of course, while she was in hospital, Sadako started folding origami cranes. And we know that Sadako wished for peace because she wrote, "I will write peace on your wings, and you will fly all over the world." She used medicine wrappings and asked other patients for the paper from their get well presents, and her best friend brought her paper from the school to use to make origami cranes. But sadly, Sadako died just 12 years old. And after she died, her schoolmates raised money to build a memorial to all the children who had died from the effects of the bomb. And her statue now stands in the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park. Ever since then, people all over the world have been making origami peace cranes as a symbol of their hopes for peace and for disarmament. So you see, Sadako's peace cranes have flown all over the world. People have been making cranes for the past 4 years as part of the Peace and Justice Center's Peace Cranes project. Atsuko Bachaku wanted to make 140,000 peace cranes and for them to be shown in an exhibition so people could see how many people died from that one bomb in 1945. Sadly, Atsuko also died, but we continued to run workshops, and now we have more than 140,000 origami peace cranes in storage. We were planning for an exhibition to be at the Just Festival this month, but due to COVID-19, it will take place in 2021. It needs to be a real exhibition, not just a virtual one. And it will not only display the wonderful, diverse peace cranes, but will also include artists' works responding to the themes of Hiroshima so that many more people will learn about the terrible effects of nuclear weapons. The P&J is a partner in the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. And thanks to the dedication of many activists around the world, as Rika mentioned today, earlier, 123 countries have signed the Nuclear Weapons Ban Treaty. 41 or more countries have now ratified. I think today at the United Nations, several more countries were due to sign on to the treaty. And when the legislatures of 50 countries have ratified the treaty, it will become international law. So by this time next year, we hope that those 50 countries will have ratified the treaty and nuclear weapons will be banned. So we don't expect that all countries that have nuclear weapons, as Tommy has pointed out, will accept that at first, but in time, we hope that all countries will finally disarm their nuclear weapons. And our exhibition next summer will celebrate the banning of nuclear weapons. As part of that project, we planned for 1,400 of these peace cranes that we've gathered to fly back to Japan to be laid at the foot of the statue of Sadako. So Sadako's dream for her origami peace cranes to fly all around the world has already come true. To ensure her dream of peace is fulfilled, we must all keep campaigning for nuclear disarmament, and to demand that our governments sign and honor the ban treaty and fulfill the dream of peace. I just want to take another minute to point out to you a couple of events that are part of our Peace Cranes project. In case you missed it and want to learn how to make one of these, a video of our origami Peace Cranes workshop will appear on our website in a few days' time. We need to do some editing. After this meeting, you could join us directly at 7:15 on Vimeo for The Priest's Tale, adapted and performed by Michael Mears. It's a firsthand account of the atomic bombing. Well, you can go to our website or to our Facebook page to find the link to that on the event page. And on Sunday evening, Michael performs The Doctor's Tale, another dramatization of another account of the bombing by a survivor. And as part of the Just Festival on the 16th of August, Michael and Yuri Yamanaka will perform his play The Mistake, which is an account of the Nagasaki bombing through the eyes of 3 people. So just go to our events page on Facebook for the links for all of these events. And then finally, later today, I hope, we'll be able to post on Facebook and Twitter a video reading by Yuri of a message from the mayor that we've received from the mayor of Hiroshima, Matsui Kazumi, for the occasion of the Peace Cranes pre-exhibition events. And I want to leave you with a short quote from the mayor's message. And the mayor wrote, more than 13,000 nuclear warheads still remain around the world, and nuclear disarmament is at a standstill. Furthermore, despite global solidarity becoming ever more important in the fight against COVID-19, a new kind of threat to all of humanity, we see self-centered nationalism in ascendance and tensions heightened by international exclusivity and rivalry around the world today. Our current leaders must recall their courageous predecessors. When nuclear superpowers, the US and the USSR, were engaged in a tense, escalating nuclear arms race, their leaders manifested reason and turned to a dialogue to seek nuclear disarmament. Leaders around the world should pursue negotiations on nuclear disarmament in good faith, as mandated by Article 6 of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and respond to the yearning of civil society for the entry into force of the treaty on nuclear weapons, a milestone on the road to a nuclear weapon-free world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if there is somebody from the Campaign Against the Arms Trade. If there isn't, if you'll please allow me, I just wanted to point out that if you go to the homepage of the Campaign Against the Arms Trade, which I have on my screen, but I don't have screen share, they've got some interesting pictures up. The first one that hits you is is of a small demonstration saying "Stop arming Saudi Arabia," and the subtitle under that is "UK government resumes arms sales to Saudi Arabia." What a surprise, huh? And then there's another little picture saying "Stop arming US state violence, stop annexation, parliamentary scrutiny, and COVID-19 and the arms trade." So if you just please go to the Campaign Against the Arms Trade's homepage, www.caat.org.uk.
We are now going to go into our traditional 1 minute silence. After the 1 minute where we remember the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, after that 1 minute, then we will have another song from Penny, and that will be the close of the meeting.
So she nani no Hiroshima do Nagasaki no Dekigoto